Just off of that, though, we've got a lot of listener questions in, and this isn't to do with track limits, but Dan Boney's just asked, any chance of Kawasaki coming back to MotoGP?
It's an old question, isn't it? But no, Kawasaki Heavy Industries, I think that they are where they are. I mean, they had that little look, ages ago now. It's such a long time ago. But, I mean, they have the resources, but they just don't seem to be interested in stretching themselves to that situation. That's why I'm so impressed with the likes of Aprilia and obviously Suzuki back in the day. And, you could ask the same of BMW. BMW, a massive manufacturer, got a great road bike that's going pretty good in World Superbikes now. Maybe it doesn't represent what they're doing on the road so much. Perhaps they take that viewpoint. I don't know. But Kawasaki, can't see them coming back. Not into MotoGP.
Sorry, Dan. Sandra has asked as well, how do you think Morbidelli and Dovizioso will do? What do you expect from them after their return from injury and absence, of course?
It's a tricky question, isn't it, Peter? I've got to say, because Morbidelli's injury, he's been out of it longer than I thought he'd be out of it. When you come back from a layoff like that, it's a fair bit of time. He's a good runner, Morbidelli, but it's going to be interesting to see when he comes back just how much this is going to hold him back. I mean, again, without being party to the road that he's on, recovery-wise, it's a tricky one. Dovizioso's been out of it a long time as well. Really, really, I have to say, this is one of the. I can feel the splinters up my backside at the moment, sitting on the fence with this, which is really unusual for me. Normally, I jump either side of the fence, whichever one I fancy. But I have to say that this really is. Thank you very much, young lady, for the text. It's going to be one of them ones that I can't call. I don't know, and I don't think anybody really does. Dovi, world class, should have been a world champion rider. Should have been a MotoGP world champion rider, by the way. I'll clarify that very quickly. Morbidelli, on his way, was looking really, really good for winning Grand Prix this year, more Grand Prix this year. It's all going to be about how rusty Dovi is and how well recovered Morbidelli is. Take your pick. Don't know.
And also, Keith, I mean, Morbidelli's moving teams in the middle of the year. Presumably, his crew are staying put. So he will be, taking over the ex-Vinales, crew chief and everything else. So Forcada and the guys will stay at Petronas until the end of this year. So Morbidelli, he's going to have to adapt to the new bike, the factory spec bike, 2021 bike, which he hasn't tested. He's also going to have a new group of people around him in the team to adapt to as well. And of course, the biggest unknown, the injury. I think he's been at Misano on a road bike, isn't he, trying his fitness, but then we haven't heard anything more. And, if that had gone fantastically, you've got to believe that he probably would have come back for Aragon. Instead, it's going to be Misano. So, yeah, I mean, the big question mark is obviously the fitness, but there's also a lot of new things going on for him. The new bike, new team, it's a lot happening there, and for Dovi the same. So it's really hard to predict exactly how quickly they'll settle in. I mean, the track Misano, it's not a power track that Morbidelli won last year at the track, so we know he goes well there. It's his home event. The Yamaha should go very well there. We know that much, but both of them have got so many unknowns at the moment that it's a tough one to call.
Dovi's got the easier task, I think, coming back on an older bike with Petronas. There's not going to be as much pressure on Dovi, so he's going to have this second half of the year to himself to enjoy, probably. Morbidelli's got the tougher one, you're right. I think factory ride. Quartararo got on very well with the upgrade, though, didn't he? Jumped straight across and he went really well. It's going to be more down to the injury, how that if it's limiting in any way his mobility when he gets on the bike and how he can move that bike around. I mean, it's a very, very physical thing. So we'll wait and see. But Misano, blimey, there's a few corners there you can throw it up the road without trying too hard. It's got to be said.
Well, Johnny Bowers on the Dovizioso talk has thrown in a question with his big wooden spoon, I think, as well. Why Yamaha having Dovi back when he did nothing on the Yamaha before? And why is Dovi going back to a satellite team when he couldn't produce the goods on a factory bike? Is he just skint?
Tell it how you see it. That's what I say.
I thought you'd enjoy that question.
Well, he's right. at the end of the day, you wonder sometimes about decisions made, don't you? When you can see that there's this backlog of young kids that are coming up through the ranks, that there are going to be some very good bikes going to some very old blokes, and that is a question. It really is. I mean, difficult to answer. I mean, I think that Dovizioso, if he'd come back at the beginning of this year, if he'd ridden at the beginning of this year, I would have thought that's all right. But I just think it's gone on a bit too long. I mean, I worry about whether the thing about MotoGP, and I've said it so many times on this website, that things move on really fast. You know, it has a life of its own. It moves on really, really quickly. And Dovizioso is a world-class rider, but he's got to step up so bloody fast. It's going to be very interesting to see how he gets on with it. Again, another one. It's a difficult one to answer, isn't it? I mean, it's how long's a piece of string? It's like we don't have enough data here to be able to answer the question. We'll see. Let's go on for something positive, shall we, Harry? Come on, find us something positive.
Well, thank you, Johnny, for that question, for bringing us all down. Cheers, Johnny. Thanks for that one. There's a topic before we come on proper to Aragon. So I know I keep teasing it, and we were talking about it the whole time anyway. But I want to talk about something I missed last time out, which was this to do with Suzuki, who have removed their ride height device after sort of a promising debut in Austria. Both riders reverted to the standard rear suspension in Silverstone, and they were the last manufacturer to fit the rear ride height device. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because someone asked the question, and I've lost it. Oh, there it is. Ashley asked the question: why did Suzuki remove the lowering device for Silverstone when there are a number of straights, and is that going to carry on for here in Aragon as well?
There's only one reason why a factory removes anything off their bike. It didn't bloody work like they thought it was going to. That's an absolutely simple fact. If there was no benefit in it, you wouldn't be carrying the extra weight. It's got extra weight. I can't remember how much it weighs now. Is it kilo and a half, something like that? So you wouldn't be dragging an extra kilo and a half around if it didn't actually do something that benefited you. I have to say, though, I'm surprised because that debut was brilliant. I mean, it really, really seemed to work for them. But whether they've got, an upgrade to that, and we're going to be seeing an upgrade as we get to, Aragon. Does it need it at Aragon? I wonder. They'll be making their decisions on it as where it will be best to be fitting it. But the worry is, of course, is if you have it here and don't have it there, it confuses riders. You do like a bit of consistency in the way that a bike feels or the equipment you've got to play with in the way of launch and the like. So I don't know. I mean, but the simple answer is it obviously didn't work as well as they thought it should. So therefore it was chucked in the back of the garage for the last one. Whether it comes out again, we'll see.
Yeah, the difficulty at Silverstone for ride height devices is you've got fast corners, and for these systems to kind of disengage, you need to be braking really hard. Do you remember, Keith, a few years back, Jack Miller on the Pramac Ducati, he set the rear of the bike down at the start of the race, and it didn't pop up at turn one. And this is, I think, it's an extension of that. Is that Suzuki were concerned that it might not release. And so when you combine that with, because it's fast corners going onto the straights, you don't gain as much. So even the riders, and Rossi was saying, he said, yeah, I've got it, it's working. But to be honest, at this track, it doesn't really make that much difference. Whereas the Ducati one, which seems really fine tuned, and we even hear now that it might even be automatic in some sense, that they found a way to kind of, it can't be electronic, or anything like that. But there's these rumors that, and also Aprilia seem to be have a system that Allocation's tried that what do they mean by automatic? That's the big question. It seems like, that they have to engage it, but maybe the moment that it actually goes down on the exit of the corners is somehow, the bike does it at the right time itself. It seems that's probably what they mean by automatic. The point being, the Ducati, these systems, they've got really advanced with them. The Suzuki one had done one race in Austria, slow corner, fast straight, slow corner. So you get the benefit out of the slow corner. You then get the hard braking, which means that it pops back up and it releases. But at Silverstone, I think they were worried about the Jack Miller thing from a few years back of, it might not pop up. The bike then stays down, chopper style, until, and they're trying to frantically, as Jack was, brake as hard as they can to make it pop up. So I would expect it to be back on the bike at Aragon. There's that big long back straight, isn't there, that's got a slow chicane onto it. And I think that's where you'll really, if they haven't got it on the bike there, they're going to really suffer. But at Silverstone, they could get away with it because the gains weren't quite as big. As we saw with Rins in the race, he was able to do a good race even without it. So
I was just smiling to myself while he was going through that, thinking of the technicalities and the like that you need to make that kind of device work. And I was thinking back to Imola, 1979. Spondon Engineering came up with this. Yes, Harry, a long way before you were born. Might even be a long way before Pete was born. I don't know.
one year after.
So, Spondon Engineering came up with this thing for a TZ750 Yamaha, which is what I was riding at the time, which was a weapon in its day. Bearing in mind, Tamburello was a flat left virtually, even on a 750 back then. Before Paul Senna, bless his cotton socks, met his maker in that corner, and they put a chicane in there. But back in the day, Tamburello was almost flat on a 750 Yamaha through there, and Spondon Engineering came up with this system to sort out your ride height. When you jammed, it was all mechanical. There was nothing to it. When you jammed the front brakes on, there was like a pivot thing at the front that used to try and push the forks back out rather than let them sink. So you had like an anti-dive, a mechanical anti-dive system. So it used to hold the fork, so you'd be braking like a flatten the tyre out. Bearing in mind, tyres were terrible in those days as well. So you can imagine how that felt. But the worst part of it, that was in conjunction with this thing on the back, this rod on the back that was connected to a floating caliper. So when you used the back brake, it pulled the back end of the bike down to get it flat. So you had this flat right into a turn. But honestly, I mean, we were a bit sophisticated even back then. We'd use a bit of back brake in the middle of a corner to settle everything down and the like, but it used to feel like someone was whipping the chair out from underneath you every time you touched the back brake. The arse end of the bike sat down. And I was just thinking about how Heath Robinson, look it up if you're too young, Heath Robinson and mackled about the junk that we had to try on what were, in those days, a sophisticated, bloody so-called sophisticated motorbike. And bloody fast motorbike. I mean, that particular motorbike was lap record holder at Northwest 200, 125 mile an hour plus on a lap. You're talking, very fast motorbikes. And the junk that we got, everything was held together with baling twine, rivets and rubbish. It was just amazing. And now we have all these extra things to think about, ride height controls and so on. Thank ever so Gigi Delinia. I'll have a word with Gigi, see if he can use any of that Spondon Engineering stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes old is best. Thank you,
That's
Ashley.
what I say to everyone, Harry.
Yeah. I bet. Thank you, Ashley, for that question. One more from our listeners I think we can squeeze in. And this is actually from, I'm not going to pronounce this correct, so I'm going to apologize already, from Wojtek Horak. Who says, we fans and visitors of the traditional Grand Prix in Borno miss MotoGP. Are the riders missing it? Is there any chance of a Grand Prix in the Czech Republic anytime soon or in the future? Obviously seeing a lot of announcements already being made provisionally for calendar 2022 calendar, mainly the pre-season calendar, but Czech Republic again on the calendar?
Brno's brilliant. I mean, I love Brno. It's one of them tracks that it's old school, isn't it? I raced on the bloody road track. It's the second Grand Prix I ever did. I did the road track. I think I finished in the bloody top 6 as well. Anyway, I reminisce too far. But the actual racetrack that you're talking about, young man, is a great racetrack, but it's shiny. It needs a surface on it. And the trouble is there's no money. I mean, I think what's happened is that the leaseholder, mentioning no names, but we know who he is, father of a rider who owns the lease on the place. Unfortunately, the local authorities don't want to stump up the cash to resurface the place again. I think the trouble you have in somewhere like the Czech Republic, when you're in the middle of a big landmass like Brno, it's absolutely cooking hot in the summer and absolutely freezing cold in the winter. And that's not a really good thing for a bit of tarmac. It tends to wear tarmac out fairly hard when it's frozen for half of the year and cooked for the other half of the year. So the problem is the track has become too slippery, too unpredictable. And so therefore, that was the excuse to use for getting rid of Brno off the calendar. The fact that there may be more lucrative Southeast Asian tracks that are pushing to get Grand Prix and a bit more room needed making in the calendar somewhere will start all the conspiracy theory off again, really, won't it?
You do wonder how such a popular event, I mean, over 200,000, I think, pretty much every year, wasn't it? How can that not be viable to have a race? But then, as you say, it needs a new surface. But then you have COVID and all these cancellations, and there's no fans coming to the track. So finding the money to resurface a track when you might not have any fans coming in to kind of as we saw last year, a lot of the events took place behind closed doors, wasn't it? So, I mean, all we can hope in that regard is that we're seeing fans coming back now, that maybe, if that would change the economic situation in terms of doing the resurfacing, because the fans are there. How can it not be economically viable when you've got so many fans? I mean, I've been to Brno a few times, and, it's just the buses coming constantly from the city, bringing people up, aren't they? And the whole forest, all the terraces of grass covered with people, and you think, well, how can this event drop away from the calendar? How can it be uneconomic with all of these people here? But maybe as it did need the track surface. There's no doubt about that. The riders, were pretty insistent on that, and I think the double whammy of having that and then COVID coming along, so you've got a big bill, but then you might not have a race. So let's hope that with the fans coming back, that maybe that'll change things, and who knows? But because the demand is definitely there, the fans want to be there.
You're talking huge money, though, aren't you? You're talking anything between £8 and £10 million to make that work. And Carol Abraham's dad, he's a wealthy fella, I'm sure, and pretty smart, but it's a big old chunk to be. You'd want to negotiate with your local authority and try and get that sorted out. You've got a bit of tarmacking going on down in the town. But Brno, it's a fantastic place to go. I mean, I wish we were doing a where to go in Brno type feature. Because I know all the places.
Wrong week. Well, maybe if it's back on the calendar, we will get to do that. But sadly, for the time being, it's not. Thank you so much for all the listener questions. We're not in the Czech Republic, but we are in Aragon this weekend. So, Keith, take it away. What are you looking forward to? Talk us around the intricacies of this track and who you've got your eye on, but don't give away who your predictions will be.
It's a spectacular racetrack. I love the racetrack. I mean, I think that I always think that Aragon gets a little bit less publicity than it really should do for how good it actually is. I think that we always end up in Valencia for the final round in Spain, and I think, go-kart track or Aragon? What would I prefer? Aragon all day long. It's a if you're going to travel to go to Aragon, you need to get your booking sorted out as far as your hotel's concerned quite early. But having said that, even if you were an hour away, I mean, we always stayed an hour and a quarter away, but there is no drive I like more than going to the track or coming home from the track. In Aragon, it is just the roads. I don't know what they've done out there. I think there was you might be able to put me straight on this, Pete. I think there was some government scheme where they just built beautiful roads because they wanted employment or something along those lines. And they built fantastic roads, smooth, fast, and what you can see through them. So you can get a bit of a skittle on, and see the traffic. So you've really got it covered. I mean, from a motorcycle point of view, it's heaven. It really is a great place to go to. And the track itself is like that. It's very, very modern, great facilities, great racetrack for all concerned. Lots of variation on there, very fast, straight, downhill into the final hairpin as well, which gives you, some of plenty of vantage points to see just how quick these bikes are going. But I think it's one of the best racetracks on the calendar for me. I just enjoy the racetrack. But most of all, it's the drive there. I mean, some of the stories, Julian's my favourite. I mean, I just passed the Repsol Honda van full of all the Repsol guys, not that you're trying to impress anybody at all, but you're trying to get past the traffic to get to the track early, as you do. And the sun's just coming up and I'm on it. And I'm in the hire car and Julian sat beside me, sort of got his hands on the ceiling and trying to, as we're motoring along. And there's this one particular section where it's a fast right-hander. And you're just cresting over a hill on this right-hander. And I just passed the Repsol Honda guys and was thinking, obviously, about them, not about the mini roundabout that was just the other side of the hill. Every bit of flesh on Julian suddenly went lightweight, stuck to the ceiling, and he's straining in the straps as we come down just the wrong side of the roundabout. None of that should be condoned at all. Nobody should be doing that kind of thing. We are strictly against all of that. I'd like to say it was a closed road, but sadly not. But the roads are fantastic. The sunshine coming down on your way home from the track in the evening just puts you in such a good mood. I think Aragon is one of them good mood tracks. It's like there's no stress involved in it. There's not enough people really to cause you any problems as far as crowds are concerned. The road management is really, really good. The police, they're quite tough, the Spanish police, but they get you in and out of there really, really well. It's got a great atmosphere, and you always get decent race. When you've got a hairpin at the end of when everyone's spreading out 5 wide into the final corner in Moto 3, tends to get your attention a little bit.
Have you ever thought about, I know you're looking for some more stuff to do, Keith, being a travel agent for all these places on the calendar. You do an absolutely sterling job of selling it. Even the drive there, I'm there. I can imagine it right now.
And the other thing is that when you do get caught by cameras, somehow the tickets don't turn up.
Hey!
It's true.
Every cloud. Well, it sounds like
I can tell you I can tell you now which countries you shouldn't get caught speeding in, because you will get penalised. But Spain is still pretty lenient.
I remember the first time I drove this year. It was actually the first time I went to France. I was on my way to Paul Ricard, and I was driving there, and it was first time driving in a foreign country, in the wrong side of the road, wrong side of the car, and I didn't know which was the slow lane, because everything had just reversed. And I remember I was going a bit slowly in the fast lane, and this taxi man overtook me and was just absolutely fuming at me, right in his side mirror, looking at me. And so that was my driving experience to Paul Ricard, which doesn't sound as nice as yours to Aragon. I quickly learned just to put my foot to the floor, or
anywhere else, Harry. We always have those guys. The driving to and from a racetrack is just as much fun.
It starts out stressful, it gets more fun. Pete, let's talk a bit more about Aragon, though, because we will be giving our predictions imminently. But history for Aragon, who are you expecting to go well and maybe not do so well this weekend?
Well, firstly, the race is a bit earlier this year, isn't it? I mean, last year, a lot of the calendar was sort of pushed back, wasn't it? So I think it was a sort of mid-October time, and it was quite cold. It gets quite cold there even this time of year, September. But as Keith will know, and the mornings you want a coat on. So, but that won't be so much of a factor this time. So that could influence things, We always say the tyre allocation, what will that be like? Who will that suit? It was a double header last year, so we had the back-to-back races there, and we saw as often two completely in a way different results. Certainly two different winners. We saw Rins won the first race. It was Suzuki's first win of the season, and then we saw Morbidelli win the second one. And we saw the KTMs go a lot better. It was one of those events where they made a big step in the second race. The Ducatis didn't really do very well. Dovi, remember, I think there was a bit of a meltdown with Petrucci in one of the qualifying sessions, wasn't there, where Petrucci followed him out and then ended up actually pushing him out of qualifying too. So, but that just illustrates that how they were struggling there. So, it's got the big straight, as Keith was saying, that you would expect would suit the Ducati, which it certainly does. But there's so many corners and it's such a challenging track. There's a reverse corkscrew and all those kind of things that it's a real riders track. I mean, the riders certainly all love it. It's got that mix, that rare mix of being sort of old school challenging, but modern safety. And it's always a popular event. As Keith says, not easy to stay anywhere near it. You're probably better off looking for an Airbnb in one of the local villages. And I think that as far as the surrounding countryside, I think used to be for where they film spaghetti westerns, is what I was always told. And when you see it, you can that sums up what the landscape is like, and so that gives you an idea. Yeah, it really does feel like, especially when you drive from Barcelona. If you drive from Barcelona Airport, you're going right from the middle of this huge city into a place where they film spaghetti westerns back in the 60s and 70s or whatever. So yeah, that's the kind of that's how far you are, if you like, from being in the metropolis of Barcelona.
It is also the Aragon Tech Park, of course, where they refreshed the 765 Triumphs. It's based on Aragon because it was originally and they were trying to make an employment centre out of it as well. I think that's why they got government help with the track. They've done a really good job of it. So Trevor Morris and the Extern Pro as is the company that looks after all the Moto2 motors. He's based at Aragon on the tech park.
Oh.
Whether that's got anything to do with spaghetti westerns and cowboys, is there a link there somewhere? Sorry, Trev.
Well, if that hasn't got you excited for the weekend yet, I don't know what will. Come on then. I know what will. Prediction time. Here we go. Keith and Pete are leading the way because I'm on 2 points and you're both tied for 3. So with that in mind, Keith, can I have your top 3 for this Sunday's Aragon Grand Prix, please?
Quartararo.
Shock.
Mark Marquez, and Rins.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's where I'm going.
Yep.
I don't know why. I've got a feeling. I've got a bit of a Brad Binder feeling, but I've just kind of elbowed him out because I have. I think the KTM will be. I mean, Brad Binder has been brilliant on Moto 2 and on the GP bike as well at Aragon. So I think Binder, if he makes the start, he'll be in the hunt. His question mark always is his qualifying and getting through that first 2 corners. If you ain't qualified well, then first 2 corners at Aragon just kill you.
Well, we'll see how that pans out. I've written it down. It's in concrete now. Pete?
I'm going to give Rins a second chance. I went with him for Silverstone, and he, in fairness, he did me pride. He nearly got it, didn't he? So, I think, as I say, he won the first race last year, and he's actually in a similar situation to last year, where he was out of the championship through injury early on. Now he's out of the championship because of these earlier crashes, if you like. So he's in the same situation. He's got no pressure. He can just go for it. It's a track we know he goes well at, like Silverstone. So I'm going to tip him to do what he did at Silverstone, but hopefully qualify better. And I think he could well win again. And second, I'll go with Quartararo because Quartararo, I think it's a shock if he's not on the podium at any race, isn't it? Yeah. And he could well win it again. Third, Marquez. Marquez. It's as Keith says, he has his fan club all come down, don't they? And it's although it's like a home race for him, isn't it? And I think that he's going to be so fired up to go well there. That he wasn't far off at Silverstone, and I think this just that boost of being the home event, and I think that he could be back on the podium.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to go for Quartararo winning. And now I did write this down before Keith put his answer. I haven't gone identical. For second place, I've gone for Jack Miller. I don't know. I've got a feeling about Miller. I feel like he had more in the bag at Silverstone, but just struggled. And I feel like he'll do better this time around. And I'm going to go for Rins on the podium again. I think it's a beginning of a turnaround. So Quartararo, Miller and Rins for me. Keith, Quartararo, Marc Marquez and Rins, and Pete, Rins, Quartararo and Marc Marquez. Let us know what your predictions are in the comments below and on Twitter. Send them in. Always good to see who's backing who. Well, not long to wait until we find out who reigns supreme in Aragon. It all kicks off, of course, on Friday, 10th of September. We shall return with you this time next week once more for more MotoGP chat, and you can keep up to date with all the very latest, of course, on crash.net. Send all your questions, queries, comments, complaints straight to Keith, and he'll answer them all for you as soon as he can, and we'll chime in as well. Just search Crash MotoGP. Please do leave us a review as well, only if it's good, wherever you get your podcasts, and we shall see you right back here next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.